Okay, boys and girls, we're going to do a sprint. This is lesson 10. And I'm just going to go through a few of these with you. They kind of are predictable at times. So 3 plus 1 is 4. And then 3 plus 1/2 is 3.5. And then 3 plus 1 is 4 plus 1/2. 3 minus 1/2, or 3 minus 1 is 2. 3 minus 1 is 2. 3.5 minus 1 is 2.5. 4 minus 2. 4.5 minus 2. 5 minus 2. 5 1/3 minus 2. So see how the whole number above the problem with the fraction kind of helps you get the whole number correct? Let's maybe try some harder ones. I don't know. Let's look at 31. 31 looks a little different. So on 31, I would do 7 plus 2, which is 9, and then 1/5 plus 1/5 would be 2/5. Look at 30. That one's pretty interesting. So 9 and 5/12. 9 and 5/12 minus 5. So 9 minus 5 is 4. So it'd be 4 and 5/12. Okay, give this a try. I will go ahead and send you the answers, but you have to promise not to listen to those until you're done with side A. I'd like for you to do side A, then check side A, then do side B. And I'm thinking maybe 5 minutes on this one. It's going to take a little bit longer to think through it. So good luck. Do your best. Side A, 4, 3 1/2, 4 1/2, 2, 2 1/2, 2, 2 1/2, 3, 3 1/3, 3 2/3, 7 2/3, 8, 6 3/4, 8 3/4, 4 3/4, 3 3/4, 2 3/4, 3/4, 6, 5 5/6, 5 1/6, 9 5/6, 10 5/6, 10 5/6, 7 5/6, 3 5/6, 5 4/5, 9 7/8, 5 4/5, 4 5/12, 9 2/5, 9 2/5, 9 4/5, 9 4/5, 7 2/3, 7 2/3, 5 2/3, 5 1/3, 5, 4 6/7, 4 6/7, 5 1/5, 5 2/5, 6 2/9. Okay, answers for side B. 3, 2 1/2, 3 1/2, 1, 1 1/2, 3, 3 1/2, 4, 4 1/3, 4 2/3, 8 2/3, 9, 7 3/4, 9 3/4, 5 3/4, 4 3/4, 3 3/4, 18, is that what I'm on?
Yeah.
3/4, 7, 5 5/6, 5 1/6, 9 5/6, 10 5/6, 10 and 5/6, 6 and 5/6, 4 and 5/6, 6 and 4/5, 9 and 7/8, 4 and 4/5, 5 and 5/12, 8 and 2/5, 8 and 2/5, 8 and 4/5, 8 and 4/5, 6 and 2/3, 6 and 2/3, 6 and 2/3, 6 and 1/3, 6, 6 and 6/7, 6 and 6/7, 4 and 1/5, 4 and 1/5, 7 and 2/9. Here's the application problem. To make punch for the class party, Mrs. Louie mixed 1 1/3 cups of orange juice, 3/4 cups of apple juice, and 2/3 cups of cranberry juice, and 3/4 cup of lemon lime soda. Mixed together, how many cups of punch does the recipe make? Extension. Each serving is 1 cup. How many batches of this recipe does Mrs. Louie need to serve her 20 students? Okay, so first of all, let's add those all together and see how many cups it actually makes. So to write the problem down first, let's write it down. 1 1/3 cups plus 3/4 plus 2/3 plus 3/4. Now I want to look at this and see if any of this can be added together ahead of time. And I see some things that can be. I see these denominators match, and I see these denominators match. So let's go ahead and do 1 plus 1/3 plus 2/3 is 3/3. 3/4 plus 3/4 is actually 1 1/2. So let me rewrite this. 1 plus 1 plus 1 1/2. So the answer to how many cups of the punch does this recipe make would be 3 1/2 cups. Now, if she needs to serve her 20 students, we've got to figure out how many recipes we need for 20 students. So let's do a tape diagram for that. So we need 20 cups, actually, for 20 students. And we know that one recipe is 3 1/2. So let's figure out what 3 1/2 plus 3 1/2 is. 3 1/2 plus 3 1/2 is 7. Okay, we can do this. So we've got 7 times something is close to 20. 7 times 3 is 21. So what if I did 3 1/2 cups, 3 1/2 cups, 2 more times? Would that give me 7 times 3? So how many batches, each one of these is a batch, so how many batches does she need to make to serve 20 students? So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 batches would serve 20 students. Okay, the lesson that we're doing today is we're practicing adding whole numbers and fractions. And so it's hard to discuss since we aren't together, but the differences between these fractions and between these problems. So I see these denominators are both 5. I see these numerators are both 1. And then I see this third problem has unlike denominators and unlike numerators. So let's go ahead and start. By the way, the answer to A, let's do that real quick in our heads. It's going to be 2 plus 1, which would be 3, plus 1/5 plus 1/5. That's a little bit like we just did on the sprint. Okay, so let's look at B. B is problem 1, I think. Okay, and I will tell you this, we're skipping the number line. This COVID-19 lesson does not need to include a number line. That would just be way too confusing. So let's start with 3 equal signs and see if that's enough. Might not be. So my first objective, I guess, is to separate my whole numbers and my fractions. So I want to do 2 plus 1 plus 1/5 plus 1/2. And you could put parentheses around those just to separate them a little more, make it easier to see. But basically, we're going to do 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus. So we're going to add 3 to whatever answer we get. To add 1/5 plus 1/2, we set it up the same way we've been used to. Common denominator for 5 and 2 is 10. So I'll write 1/5 and 1/2. 5 times 2 equals 10, and 2 times 5 equals 10. So that gives me 2 plus 5, which is 7. So my answer to this one is 3 7/10. Now, if I'm going too fast, just pause it and get caught up. I'll try and keep going slow. Okay, let's do the next problem. So this problem is similar. So let's get our equal signs on there. And let's take a look at the answer to this one was 3 7/10. So it was between the whole numbers 3 and 4. So the next one, it says the sum will be between which two numbers. And it means which two whole numbers. So let's see, we've got 2 plus 1, that would be 3. 4/5 plus 1/2 might be more than one whole. So that would give me, instead of between 3 and 4, it might be between 4 and 5. So let's see, okay? The first thing, this isn't set up very good. I'm going to erase that equal sign right there, and we'll put another one down here. So I've got to separate my whole numbers from my fractions. And you can put parentheses around those to make it easier to see. So we're going to have 3 plus here all the way down. And I think that's maybe what we had on the last problem. Now 4/5 plus 1/2 and common denominator for 5 and 2 is 10 again. So that's good. The only thing different is 4 is a lot bigger than 1, like we had on our last problem. We had a 1 there. So 5 times 2 equals 10. That gives me an 8. And 2 times 5 equals 10. So that gives me 8 plus 5, 13/10. So this right here is more than one whole. So if I decompose that, it's going to be 10/10 plus 3/10. So I have 3 plus 10/10 plus 3/10 would give me 4 3/10. So my answer between 4 and 5, did that make sense? Sure did. Problem 3. How many problems do we have today? Ooh, 6. Okay, let's do problem 3 now. So I'm going to put my equal signs down here, just to give myself some more room. 2 plus 5 is 7. So I'm just going to guess that it's going to be between 7 and 8. We'll see if I'm right. Okay, so 2 plus 5. Remember, I'm taking the whole numbers and putting them out in front. 2/3 plus 2/5. Now this is basically just more of the same practice that we just had in lesson 9. The only difference is we have a whole number in front. So 7 plus, and I don't know if you remember me saying this last week, but I like to put my whole number in front so I don't forget about it. So now set this up to find common denominators for 3 and 5. Common denominator for 3 and 5 is 15. So we have 2/3 plus 2/5. So 3 times 5 is 15. 2 times 5 is 10. 5 times 3 is 15. 2 times 3 is 6. So that gives me 7 plus 16/15. I'm going to decompose this, take out 1 whole, plus 1/15. So that gives me 7 plus 1, which is 8, and 1/15. Okay, hopefully this is making sense to you. Are we going to subtract? Nope, still adding. Okay, so the next one. This looks like it's going to be a little bit higher. So I've got 3 plus 6. So we're going to guess it's between 10 and 11. Okay, so 3 plus 6. Hey, let's take one of those steps out, don't you think? Let's add 3 plus 6 in our head. We don't need to write all that. So 3 plus 6 is 9. I've got that on there ahead of time. So now I'm going to add 5/7 plus 2/3. Common denominator for 7 and 3, 21. So 7 times 3 and 3 times 7. 15 plus 14 is 29. 21sts. So now we're going to take out 1 whole plus 8 21sts, because 29 minus 21 is 8. So that gives me 9 plus 1, so 10 and 8 21sts. That's my answer. Okay, aren't you glad we're not doing the number line? All right, so 3 equal signs. Let's do the next problem. Remember, pause it if you need to get caught up. It's hard to know how fast to go when there are no children in the classroom. So 3 plus 4 is 7. Let's get that on there ahead of time. And then we're going to add 1/2 plus 7/8. I think it's going to be between 8 and 9. So 1/2 plus 7/8. Now this is one of those that you can go ahead and multiply them together. If you do, you'll have to simplify. So the other option is to do your least common multiple and go ahead and put 8 and 2 on there. And you can see right away that we can use 8 as our common denominator. Now, if you want to use 16, you can. It's no big deal. We're going to practice with it using 8, though. So 2 times something equals 8. 2 times 4. And that makes sense because 1/2 is the same thing as 4/8. And then 8 times 1 equals 8. So I've got 4 plus 7 is 11. So if I decompose this, 8/8 plus 3/8. So that gives me 7 plus 1. So 8 and 3/8. Now if we would have used the 16, you would have gotten a different fraction than 3/8, and then you would have had to probably divide it by 2 or 3, or divide by the numerator. I'm not sure. So let's look at the next one. These are bigger numbers, but we don't need to be afraid of them because, first of all, we're not doing the number line. So 15 plus 7. 15 plus 7. So we're going to have 22 plus, and then we're going to add 5/6 plus 9/10. So those are almost each 1 whole. Common denominator for 6 and 10. Let's figure that out. 60 is pretty big. I'm not sure I want to use 60. So I'm going to go ahead and put 6 and 10 on here. And 10, 20, 30, 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36. I'm going to try a 30. See how that works. Now you have to be really careful because you're not going to be able to put 6 times 10 and 10 times 6. You're going to have to think about it. So 6 times something equals 30. 6 times 5. So this will be 25. So 10 times something equals 30. So 10 times 3. So I've got 25 plus 27. 25 plus 25 is 50. So if I add 2 more to that, it's going to be 52 thirtieths. So I'll decompose that. 30 thirtieths plus 22 thirtieths. Am I right? I think I am. So that gives me 22 plus 1 whole. So that gives me 23 and 22 thirtieths. Now I'm trying to figure out what I did wrong. We have to simplify this. So it's going to be 23 and 11 fifteenths.